Private First Class Amanda Thompson crouched behind the 500-yard target line at Camp Pendleton's rifle range. Charlie, her hands working methodically to replace shot-up silhouettes while the California sun beat down mercilessly at 10 a.m. The sound of M4 carbines echoed across the range as 2nd Battalion conducted their quarterly marksmanship qualification, but Amanda had learned to tune out the constant crack of gunfire during her 8 months of range duty. Which city are you watching from? Share it in the comments. Maybe someone else from your city is here too. And if you believe heroes can appear in the most unexpected ways, hit subscribe and give this video a like. She moved efficiently between the target frames, her Marine Corps Desert Utility uniform already soaked with sweat despite the early hour. Most Marines barely acknowledged her presence. To them, she was just part of the range infrastructure, as essential but invisible as the target mechanisms themselves. Amanda preferred it that way. Invisibility meant safety, and safety meant she could continue her careful masquerade of being nothing more than a support Marine who had somehow avoided any real combat training. The truth was far more complicated than anyone at Camp Pendleton could imagine. Staff Sergeant Miguel Rodriguez was having the worst shooting day of his 15-year Marine Corps career. Standing at the 500-yard firing line, he stared through his rifle scope at a target that might as well have been on the moon. 3 consecutive strings of fire, and he had managed only 12 hits out of a possible 20 shots. For a Marine infantry leader, this wasn't just embarrassing, it was potentially career-ending. "Rodriguez," called out Gunnery Sergeant Williams from the tower, his voice carrying across the range through the loudspeaker. "You need 14 hits minimum to qualify. This is your last string." Miguel wiped sweat from his forehead and tried to control his breathing. His hands were shaking slightly, something that had never happened before in combat or training. At 33 years old, he was facing the possibility of losing his infantry military occupational specialty if he couldn't pass this basic marksmanship test. The stress was eating him alive. Amanda noticed his struggle from her position downrange. She had been watching Miguel shoot for 2 hours, and his problem was obvious to her trained eye. His breathing pattern was erratic, his natural point of aim kept shifting, and he was pulling shots to the left because of excessive trigger finger pressure. These were fundamental mistakes that any competent marksman could correct with proper coaching. But Amanda wasn't supposed to be a competent marksman. According to her official record, she was a logistics specialist who had somehow managed to avoid weapons training throughout her entire Marine Corps career. Her marksmanship scores were deliberately mediocre, carefully calibrated to avoid drawing attention while staying within acceptable limits. Miguel chambered his final round and settled into the prone position. Through her spotting scope, Amanda could see his muscle tension, the way his shoulders hunched with anxiety. She found herself silently coaching him, whispering corrections that only she could hear. "Relax your grip, control your breathing, follow through." The shot cracked across the range. Through her scope, Amanda saw the bullet impact 6 inches left of the target's center ring. Miss. That made 13 misses out of 19 shots. Miguel needed to hit this final shot to qualify, and Amanda could tell from his body language that he was about to fail. Miguel lowered his rifle and stared at the target in defeat. 15 years of Marine Corps service, including 3 combat deployments to Afghanistan, and he was going to wash out because he couldn't hit a paper target at 500 yards. The irony was crushing. That's when Amanda made a decision that would change everything. She stood up from her position behind the target line and walked toward the firing positions. Several Marines turned to look at her with curiosity. Range personnel didn't normally approach the firing line during qualification courses. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez," Amanda called out, her voice carrying clearly across the range. Miguel turned toward her, surprised. In 8 months of range operations, the quiet support Marine had never spoken to him directly. "What is it, Thompson?" Amanda hesitated for just a moment, knowing that what she was about to do would shatter the carefully constructed cover identity she had maintained for over 2 years. But watching a good Marine's career disintegrate because of correctable technique errors was more than she could bear. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" Miguel nodded, curious despite his frustration. "Your natural point of aim is drifting left because your support elbow is positioned too far under the rifle. You're also breaking your cheek weld between shots, which is destroying your sight picture consistency." The firing line fell silent. Other Marines turned to stare at Amanda with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. A support Marine with no combat training was giving marksmanship advice to an infantry staff sergeant with multiple combat tours. Miguel studied Amanda's face, looking for signs of mockery or disrespect. Instead, he saw calm confidence and genuine concern. Thompson, how do you know about natural point of aim and cheek weld? Amanda realized she had passed the point of no return. Staff Sergeant, I know because I've been watching Marines shoot on this range for 8 months, and I've seen these same errors hundreds of times. Gunnery Sergeant Williams climbed down from the tower, clearly annoyed by the interruption to his qualification schedule. Thompson, get back to your position. Rodriguez, you have 1 shot left. Take it or fail. But Miguel was studying Amanda with new interest. Something in her demeanor suggested she knew exactly what she was talking about. Thompson, show me what you mean about the elbow position. Amanda approached the firing line, acutely aware that 30 Marines were now watching her every move. She knelt beside Miguel and demonstrated proper prone shooting position with empty hands, her movements precise and practiced. Support elbow directly under the rifle, not angled out. Cheek weld consistent and firm. Natural breathing pattern, not forced breath control. Miguel watched her demonstration and realized she was right. His elbow had been drifting throughout the qualification, subtly altering his point of aim without him noticing. Okay, Thompson, I'll try your corrections. But as Miguel settled back into position, Amanda surprised everyone again. Staff Sergeant, you're still tensing up. The pressure is getting to you. She paused, then made a decision that would reveal everything she had been hiding. Sir, may I demonstrate the proper technique? The range fell completely silent. Gunnery Sergeant Williams stared at Amanda in disbelief. Thompson, you're not even qualified on the rifle. You're a logistics Marine. Amanda met his gaze steadily. Gunny, permission to prove that statement wrong? Miguel looked between Amanda and Williams, then made an impulsive decision born of desperation. Thompson, if you can show me the right way to make this shot, I'll take whatever consequences come from letting you try. He handed Amanda his M4 carbine. Amanda accepted the rifle with the fluid movements of someone completely comfortable with the weapon. She performed a rapid function check, adjusted the sling for her smaller frame, and settled into the prone position with mechanical precision. Her movements were so smooth and professional that several Marines exchanged glances of recognition. This wasn't a support Marine handling a weapon for the first time. This was a trained marksman who knew exactly what she was doing. Amanda peered through the scope at the 500-yard target. The wind was running left to right at approximately 8 miles per hour, requiring a slight adjustment for bullet drift. The afternoon heat was creating mirage effects that would affect bullet trajectory. She made mental calculations that had become second nature during years of precision shooting. The key, she said calmly, speaking loudly enough for the assembled Marines to hear, is treating each shot as an independent event. Don't think about the previous misses, focus only on this single shot. Amanda controlled her breathing, found her natural point of aim, and applied steady pressure to the trigger. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed across the range. Through his spotting scope, Gunnery Sergeant Williams watched the bullet strike dead center in the target's bullseye. Holy shit, he muttered, forgetting his usual professional composure. Amanda worked the rifle's bolt smoothly and fired again. Another perfect center hit. Then a third shot, equally precise, and a fourth. 5 shots, 5 perfect bullseyes, fired with the casual competence of someone who had done this thousands of times before. She safed the weapon and handed it back to Miguel, who was staring at her with a mixture of awe and confusion. Staff Sergeant, the rifle is functioning perfectly. The ammunition is accurate. Your shooting position just needed minor adjustments. Gunnery Sergeant Williams walked over to Amanda, his expression serious. Thompson, where the hell did you learn to shoot like that? Amanda stood at attention, knowing her cover was completely blown. Gunny, I learned from my father, Gunnery Sergeant James Thompson, retired. He was a scout sniper instructor at Quantico before his medical retirement. Williams' eyebrows shot up. Jimmy Thompson, the Jimmy Thompson who holds the record for longest confirmed kill in Iraq? Amanda nodded. Yes, Gunny. He's been training me to shoot since I was 12 years old. The implications hit everyone at once. Amanda Thompson wasn't just a support Marine who happened to be good with a rifle. She was the daughter of one of the Marine Corps' most legendary marksmen, trained from childhood in precision shooting techniques that most Marines never learned. Miguel finally found his voice. Thompson, if you can shoot like that, why are you working range detail? Why aren't you in infantry? Why isn't this in your record? Amanda looked uncomfortable for the first time since picking up the rifle. Staff Sergeant, that's complicated. William stepped closer. Thompson, I'm going to need a full explanation. Marines with your level of marksmanship skill don't end up in logistics by accident. Amanda took a deep breath. Gunny, when I enlisted, I specifically requested a non-combat MOS. My father had seen enough war, and I didn't want to put my family through the stress of having another combat Marine. But your shooting scores during basic training, Williams pressed, they're in your record as barely acceptable. I shot deliberately poorly during qualification to avoid being noticed by infantry recruiters, Amanda admitted. I wanted to serve my country, but I wanted to do it safely, behind the lines. Miguel shook his head slowly. Thompson, you just demonstrated expert-level marksmanship that most of my infantry Marines couldn't match. You've been wasting your talent for 2 years. Amanda's voice grew quieter. Staff Sergeant, I've watched good Marines die in combat zones. I've seen what war does to families. I chose logistics because I thought I could serve without risking becoming another casualty statistic. Williams studied her carefully. Thompson, what changed your mind today? Why reveal your abilities now? Amanda looked at Miguel, then back at Williams. Because I couldn't watch a good Marine fail when I knew I could help. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez has served this country honorably for 15 years. If a simple coaching correction could save his career, then my cover wasn't worth maintaining. The range fell silent as everyone processed what they had just witnessed. A support Marine had revealed herself to be one of the most skilled marksmen any of them had ever seen, and she had done it not for personal glory, but to help a fellow Marine in need. Miguel extended his hand to Amanda. Thompson, I don't know how to thank you. Amanda shook his hand. Staff Sergeant, just make your next shot count. 2 hours later, Amanda found herself sitting in the office of Lieutenant Colonel Morrison, the battalion commander. Also present were Gunnery Sergeant Williams and a civilian woman who introduced herself as Miss Peterson from Headquarters Marine Corps. Private First Class Thompson, Colonel Morrison began. Your demonstration this afternoon has raised some interesting questions about your assignment and capabilities. Miss Peterson opened a file folder. Amanda, we've reviewed your enlistment contract and your stated preferences for military occupation. You specifically declined combat arms training and requested assignment to logistics support. Amanda sat at attention. Yes, ma'am, that's correct. Colonel Morrison leaned back in his chair. Thompson, Gunnery Sergeant Williams tells me you demonstrated marksmanship skills that exceed those of most of our infantry Marines. He also says you've been deliberately underperforming for 2 years. Yes, sir. I wanted to serve my country, but I didn't want to be placed in combat situations. Miss Peterson studied Amanda carefully. Your father's reputation precedes you. Gunnery Sergeant James Thompson was one of our most decorated scout snipers. Were you hoping to avoid comparisons? Amanda hesitated. Ma'am, partly, but mostly I was trying to avoid following in his footsteps into combat zones. Colonel Morrison nodded understanding. Thompson, I appreciate your honesty, but here's the situation we're facing. The Marine Corps has invested significant resources in your training, and we've just discovered that one of our most talented potential marksmen has been working range cleanup detail for 8 months. Sir, I've performed my assigned duties to the best of my ability. Nobody's questioning your work ethic, Thompson, Williams interjected, but we're questioning whether you're in the right job. Miss Peterson leaned forward. Amanda, we'd like to offer you an opportunity. There's a new program being developed for precision marksmanship instruction. It's not a combat role, but it would allow you to use your talents to train other Marines. Amanda looked surprised. Ma'am, what kind of instruction? Colonel Morrison answered. You would become a marksmanship coach for Marines who are struggling with qualification standards. Based on what I saw today with Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, you have the ability to diagnose and correct shooting errors that our current instructors are missing. It would be teaching, not fighting, Miss Peterson added. You'd be stationed at Quantico, working with the Weapons Training Battalion. You'd help Marines become better shooters without ever leaving the continental United States. Amanda considered this proposal. Sir, would this involve changing my MOS? Yes, Colonel Morrison replied. You'd be reclassified as a marksmanship instructor. Same base pay, but with additional qualifications that would benefit your career progression. Amanda was quiet for a long moment. Colonel, may I ask why you're offering me this opportunity? Williams spoke up. Thompson, because what you did today wasn't just good shooting. You diagnosed Rodriguez's problems from 500 yards away and corrected them in under 5 minutes. That's not just marksmanship skill, that's teaching ability. Miss Peterson nodded agreement. Amanda, the Marine Corps needs instructors who can help struggling Marines improve their skills. You demonstrated today that you have both the technical expertise and the teaching instinct to fill that role. Colonel Morrison stood up. Thompson, I'm not ordering you to accept this assignment. I'm offering it to you because I think it's where you can do the most good for the Corps while staying within your comfort zone regarding combat deployment. Amanda thought about Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, about the relief in his eyes when she had helped him understand his shooting errors. She thought about all the Marines she had watched struggle on the range over the past 8 months, Marines she could have helped if she hadn't been hiding her abilities. Sir, if I accept this assignment, would I be able to continue helping Marines like Staff Sergeant Rodriguez? Thompson, you'd be helping dozens of Marines like Rodriguez every month, Williams replied. Marines whose careers depend on passing marksmanship qualifications they're currently failing. Amanda made her decision. Colonel, I accept the assignment. 6 months later, Amanda stood on the firing line at Quantico's Weapons Training Battalion, wearing the chevrons of a Lance Corporal and the instructor badge that marked her as a certified marksmanship coach. In front of her, a class of 20 Marines was practicing the fundamentals she had taught them over the previous week. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, now stationed at Quantico as an assistant instructor, approached her during a break in training. Lance Corporal Thompson, how are the new students progressing? Amanda smiled, watching her Marines apply the techniques she had taught them. Staff Sergeant, 18 of 20 are now shooting expert scores. The other 2 are well within marksman qualification. Rodriguez nodded approvingly.
No outstanding.
You know, Thompson, I never properly thanked you for what you did that day at Pendleton. Amanda looked at him seriously. Staff Sergeant, you don't need to thank me. Helping Marines succeed is what we're supposed to do for each other. Maybe, Rodriguez replied, but not everyone has the courage to step out of hiding when it matters most. As Amanda watched her students continue their practice, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She had spent 2 years trying to avoid using her talents, afraid that excellence would lead to danger. But she had learned that hiding from your abilities doesn't protect anyone, including yourself. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her father. Saw your promotion photo. Proud of you for finding your own way to serve. Love, Dad. Amanda smiled as she put her phone away. She wasn't a scout sniper like her father, and she wasn't an infantry marine like the one she trained. But she was exactly where she belonged, using her skills to make other Marines better prepared for whatever challenges they might face. The woman who had hidden behind a broom and dustpan had become one of the Marine Corps' most effective marksmanship instructors, proving that sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't charging into battle, but stepping forward when someone needs your help.